Back in 2023, I experienced one of the most unnerving and scary nights of my life. I can't explain what happened. I never liked staying home alone, but after this night, I don't think I've ever stayed overnight anywhere alone since. At the time, my fiancé Ryan and I were looking to buy a house since our lease just expired in our apartment, and we didn't want to renew for another whole year. One of my dad's oldest friends owned a house in the area that was currently available to rent because the previous renters had passed away. Since my dad was so close to the owner of the house, he agreed to let us stay there for a cheap rate, and also told us we could stay as long as we wanted. Basically, we were renting month to month in a nice home in a beautiful area of town. It took a lot of house hunting stress away. The only downside for me was that I wasn't thrilled about moving into a house where both residents died within a few weeks of each other inside the house. They were old, so it wasn't like a vicious death or anything, but still, I didn't love the idea. It didn't bother Ryan at all. He was excited about the low price tag of the house. He's not one to believe in bad energy, but I most definitely am. I remember when we first moved in, he would constantly mock me for being afraid. He even went as far as to mimic ghost sounds just to mess with me. Don't get me wrong, Ryan's a great guy. I know I'm painting a picture of him being a jerk, but he's always just joking around. Sometimes you need to knock him down when he plays around too much, and I always did. When we first moved in, it had this awful tan carpet all throughout the house. My dad's friend told us that he was having someone come over to tear out the carpet and put in hardwoods because the carpet was stained all over the place, on top of just being ugly. In the living room, there was a giant dark stain on the carpet. The first day we moved in, Ryan asked my dad's friend if he knew where the stain came from, and he shared information I wish I hadn't heard. It's really sad. The woman fell, hit her head on an end table, and the stain was from the blood. They think that was what led to her passing. She went to the hospital that night, and unfortunately, she never came home. Then he proceeded to tell us that her husband had passed away just a few weeks before her. He had a heart attack in the basement. I was horrified to be living in this house, even just temporarily, but sometimes you need to do what's most cost efficient, and this was it. We had only been there for maybe 2 days when they came to do the floors. I was so happy when the carpet was gone. He also had someone come in and paint the inside of the house. Just that little touch-up made the house feel so much better. After those little cosmetic touches, I started to settle in. It also helped that he added one of those annoying security systems inside the house as well. Every time you open the door, you get the automated voice saying, "Front door open." It got old very fast. Even though it was annoying, it did make me feel better. It was a little over a month of being there, and Ryan was leaving for the weekend. It was his bachelor party. I was a little on edge about being alone for a couple of nights, but by this time, the house felt like a home. I also had the company of our cattle dog, Rex, which made me feel safe. Friday, July 7th, I left for work at 7 a.m. I kissed Ryan goodbye because he was heading out a few hours later and wouldn't be back until Sunday afternoon. I got home that evening and felt a little off. I was positive that I was just feeling anxious because I was alone. I ordered myself Thai food since Ryan hates it and it's my favorite. I put on The Office and just watched my feel-good show until I started getting tired. I think it was close to midnight, and I began to hear this weird noise coming from the basement. This was an older house, so I just kept telling myself that the house is creaking. I turned off the TV and started heading into the bedroom. That's when Rex ran to the basement door and started barking. This was not normal behavior for Rex. He was protective but quiet. He didn't really bark a lot. He mostly howled when he would get vocal. But on this night, he was barking. He sounded tense, like something was wrong. I tried consoling him, but he wouldn't calm down. I don't know why I did this, but I slowly opened the basement door and turned the light on. Rex stopped barking and started to growl. I was gonna go down and just make sure everything was okay, and then I remembered that the old man died down there. I know it sounds crazy, but that freaked me out. I felt frozen at the top of the stairs. I couldn't even look. I tried taking a picture of the basement from the top of the stairs, but it was just too dark down there to see anything. I was too scared to go down there myself and look, especially with Rex losing his mind. I shut the door and went to the bedroom. Eventually, Rex calmed down and joined me in the room. He wasn't barking or growling anymore. Instead, he stayed at the bottom of the bed staring at the door all night. It was like he was on high alert. This scared me more than his barking. I slept horribly that night. I expected someone or something to run into my room at any moment. I made my coffee in the morning and got ready for the day. I planned on catching up on some chores around the house that I had been neglecting. I gathered all my laundry, and when I made my way to the laundry room, I freaked out. This may seem small and trivial to some, but it freaked me out like you can't even believe. The washing machine was sticking out from the wall several feet, not just a little wiggle. This thing was nearly in the middle of the room. At first, I ran out of the room. I couldn't figure out how or why something like that could happen. Once I composed myself, I went back to the washer and checked it out. Other than being in the middle of the room, nothing else seemed out of place. I moved it back to where it was, and it wasn't easy. This was a heavy unit. I felt like I should have heard it moving. Even though I was completely on edge, I continued with everything I had planned for the day. I called Ryan and told him about everything. I could tell he was skeptical and apprehensive, but he still believed me mostly and was concerned. He's just one of those people who believes everything can be explained by something. That's probably true in this situation as well, but I still couldn't shake these nerves and that horrible feeling brewing inside. He told me they were heading home first thing in the morning, and that he would be back sometime in the late morning, which was at least earlier than they originally planned. Saturday night was a lot like Friday night. I got some food, cuddled up with Rex on the couch, and watched The Office. It was 9:18 that night, and I heard something loud outside the house. It was loud enough that it made me jump, even with the TV super loud. It sounded like an explosion. Then I got a notification on my phone from the garage camera. I pulled it up, and there was a video. My garage door was open in the video, which is crazy. We literally never used the garage door. We only used the garage for storage. We didn't park in it because we both had bigger vehicles. In the video, you can see flashes coming from the driveway. The video doesn't do it justice though. It just sounds like fireworks. I opened the door from the house that led to the garage. I looked in the driveway, and there appeared to be no evidence of fireworks, an explosion, or anything. It was the strangest thing. I saved the video and closed the garage door. Trying to get comfortable in bed after that was not easy. After the incident in the driveway, my heart was racing because I had no idea what had just happened. My brain was confused because I couldn't even process why I was scared. I couldn't tell if I was scared of something insidious in the house that I can't see, or if there was someone actually messing with me. I think I got up 3 separate times and made sure the security alarm was set. Just like the previous night, Rex stood guard at the bottom of the bed, staring at the door, occasionally letting a light growl slip. I ended up falling asleep eventually. I woke up suddenly because someone was pounding on my front door. I looked at the time, and it said 3:39 in the morning. I had the bedroom door shut, so he couldn't get out of the room. I just stayed in bed. I couldn't move if I even wanted to. It wasn't like somebody knocking. It was just a continuous banging on the door. Finally, I got up. Just before opening the bedroom door, I heard front door open, coming from the security system. I ran to lock the bedroom door. I grabbed my phone to call the cops, but it wouldn't turn on. Whenever I would press the side button to get the screen to light up, it just lit up with a black screen. I think this was the moment I started to cry. I looked over, and I was able to visibly see the doorknob shaking. I started screaming, "Go away!" I called the police and told them someone had broken into the house. They showed up promptly and found nothing out of the ordinary except for the fact that the front door was wide open. Nothing had been stolen, and there was no sign of any foul play at all. I showed the police the video, and they assumed it was most likely some kids lighting fireworks off, even though there was zero evidence of that in the driveway. As for the door opening, the cops told me it must have been the wind. Yeah, that's it. The wind, on a humid July night, is gonna shoot open a door that's locked with a deadbolt. That really nailed the case on this one. After the police left, it was nearly dawn. I took Rex and drove to my parents' house. I stayed there until Ryan got home. I told them what happened, and they were kind of on the side of the police, but still comforted me anyway. When Ryan got home, I told him everything, and he didn't think I had a brush with anything paranormal as I did, but he did feel like something had happened, and he was concerned. We did stay at that house for a couple more months until we found our new home. Nothing ever happened again. Before that weekend, I had never experienced anything even remotely unexplainable like that, and nothing like that has ever happened since. At the time of writing this, we're almost to the 3-year anniversary of that night. Whatever I experienced that weekend, I just hope I never experience anything like that again. I used to live next door to a bar, and I hated it. Thankfully, it wasn't like right next door. There was a line of trees that went all the way around the bar, so I did have some privacy. However, from my driveway, if I looked just right, I could literally see the side of the bar, and that's where everyone would go outside and smoke. Most of the time, it wasn't that bad. It was only horrible on the weekends, or if the local sports team was playing, which seemed like every other day sometimes. I should also say that at the time of the story, I was working retail. That means I worked most weekends, so they would be partying it up at the bar being loud, and I was trying to sleep. It was a great time. Out of all the annoying nights I dealt with, and there were many, one night specifically still sticks with me, and is probably something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was a Saturday night, and my best friend Layla was coming over. She's like a sister to me. We've been friends since elementary school, and still are to this day. Around the time of this story, Layla was working hard trying to set me up with anybody. This was kind of before all the dating apps became popular. The apps would have really helped me break the ice. I'm an incredibly awkward person. I've had a hard time interacting with strangers. The thought of going up to a random woman and asking her out seemed more terrifying than the scariest horror movie you could think of. I'm a massive dork, and I love that about myself. I love my comic books, my collectibles, and more than anything, just relaxing at home. It's kind of hard to meet people when being a homebody is the main part of my identity. That's why Layla was trying to be the ultimate wingman. It wasn't going well, though. I had a few dates, but nothing struck. So, on this specific night, Layla came over for dinner and to hang out for a while until her girlfriend got out of work. We had a great night. She gave me some of her classic Layla dating tips to try out next time I go on a date. Around 10 that night, her girlfriend called her and told her she was leaving work. I walked Layla to her car and said goodbye. As I watched her drive away, I heard loud noises coming from the bar. I glanced over and saw a group of maybe 7 or 8 girls. They were clearly drinking and feeling good. They were laughing and talking loudly. I could clearly hear every word one of the girls was saying to her friend. I shook my head, and just as I was getting ready to turn around and walk back inside, I noticed one of the girls looking in my direction. I looked around to see if she could have maybe been staring at someone else, but it clearly looked like she was staring at me. I didn't react because I still wasn't sure if she was looking at me or something else. All the women outside started to head back into the bar, but this woman stayed back a little bit. It was like she wasn't with the group of girls, even though she was standing with them. Then she waved. She had to have been waving at me. There was literally no one else around. I didn't wave back at first. Then she started waving more aggressively. I hesitantly waved back, and she reacted by blowing a kiss in my direction. All I did was smile and go inside. Clearly, it was just a woman at the bar who may have had one too many drinks. After the weird interaction outside, I went in and started playing video games since I had a weekend off for once. I couldn't think of a better way to spend the evening. Around 1:30 that morning, I heard a knock on the door. I paused the game I was playing. I heard the gentle knock again. I wasn't that freaked out because of the close proximity to the bar. I've had people show up at my doorstep before. Some people in this town really like to party. I was used to weird things like this happening. Just in case it was something serious, I got up and looked out the small window next to the front door. Nobody was standing there. At that moment, it pretty much confirmed that it was just someone from the bar being an idiot. My heart was racing a little bit, just because hearing a knock at the door at that hour is always a little jarring. I didn't get back on my game right away. I was sitting in my front room, reading something on my laptop. I would say maybe 15 minutes had passed since I heard the knock, and I got up to look out the window one more time, just to confirm nobody was outside. When I looked out the window, I didn't see anybody, but I did notice that the light inside my car was on. When I focused a little harder, I could also see that my driver's side door was slightly open. Again, I wasn't that scared. I was angrier than anything else. It wouldn't be the first time that someone from the bar tried to break into my car and steal something. The joke was on them because I didn't keep anything valuable in my car. The last time this happened, the light inside my car was on all night, and my battery died the next morning. I didn't want that to happen again. I unlocked the front door, went outside, and made my way to my car. I looked in the back seat just to make sure nobody was camping out back there. Once I realized nobody was in the car, I locked it and headed back inside. Once I got inside and locked the door, I realized I could smell something. It was like a lavender perfume or something. It could have been Layla, but she isn't the perfume type, and I don't think the smell would have lingered that long. My thought was that whoever accidentally knocked on the door was probably wearing too much perfume and the smell was still lingering on the front porch. I finished what I was doing on the computer, shut down my video game, and decided to finally head to bed. I still felt a little anxious about everything that happened, but I wasn't scared. I put on a movie in bed and tried to drift off. I don't know exactly how much time had passed until I heard something. I turned the movie off so I could hear better. I thought I could hear someone running around the house outside my room. It sounded like light, delicate footsteps, but they were moving rapidly. I moved closer to the door to listen. I heard the sound of giggling. It was a soft, feminine giggle. When I heard the giggling and unmistakable sounds of running around, I completely shut my cracked bedroom door and called the police. I told them that someone broke into my house, most likely somebody from the bar next door. While I was waiting for the police, every minute felt like an hour. Eventually, I didn't hear the running around anymore. I quietly got up and left the bedroom. I grabbed one of my dad's golf clubs from my closet and started slowly walking through the house. When I got to the kitchen, I froze completely. Just standing in my kitchen was a small blonde woman staring out the window. She was wearing an old-looking, tattered pink dress. Then it hit me. This was the woman from the bar who waved at me earlier that night. Before I could even react, she said while still looking out the window, "Hey buddy, I know you're there." Then she snapped around quickly and stared directly at me. Then she started to run at me. I ran to the bathroom, shut the door, and locked it. She kept knocking on the bathroom door, begging me to open it. It wasn't long after this that the police showed up. They were inside the house and knocking on the door. I opened the door and only saw the officers inside the house. I looked down, and right outside the bathroom was one of my steak knives from the kitchen. After leaving the bathroom, we noticed that the back door was also left open. We figured that she must have run out the back door. The next day, we went to the bar and asked them if they remembered anybody who fit that description, and the owner knew right away. He told us that she was dirty and apparently bothering the guests. Eventually, he had to throw her out of the bar. She was lingering outside for a while, but once he threatened to call the police, she disappeared. After that night, I never saw her again, thank God. I don't know why she targeted me. Maybe she was just crazy and homeless. Maybe she was on drugs. I spent a while trying to figure out how she got into the house. The only time I could think of is when I went outside to shut my car door. She had to have been hiding somewhere near the door and ran inside when I wasn't looking. I'll never forget that night. Thankfully, nothing serious happened, and I'm able to tell my story. I just hope that this woman got the help that she needed, and that she isn't terrorizing more people. I've spent most of my life being alone. That's not a knock on anybody in my family or past relationships. It's just that I've always thrived when I'm alone. Whenever I date, I end up breaking off the relationship before it gets too serious. This isn't a pity party either. That's the way I've always liked it. Being able to focus on myself, I've been able to build my company and find success. My job allows me to travel all over the world and meet people from every walk of life. Basically, I'm kind of like an interior decorator. I meet with clients, talk about ways to design rooms, and help them achieve their vision. I'm currently in my mid-30s, and for the first time in my life, I have a roommate. Last year, something happened to me, and now I never want to be home alone again. Here's why. Years of grinding allowed me to save money, so I was able to buy my dream home. I moved into the house 6 months before the events of the story took place. By this time in my company's life, I was fortunate enough to be able to pick and choose my clients. Because of the high demand, I unfortunately had to turn a lot of people down. With the success of the company, I spent a lot of time working, even when I was home. Unless I was meeting with a client somewhere, I did most of my work right from my home office. A few months after I moved in, I started hearing this weird noise when I was working in my office. I didn't hear it all the time, just sometimes. The noise was like a shuffling sound. I realize that's vague, but that's exactly what it sounded like. Imagine the sound of someone pushing a box in a room next to you. That's kind of what it sounded like. The shuffling was always brief, but loud enough that it would break my concentration whenever I would hear it. The first few times I heard the noise, I ignored it and went back to work. Once it started happening semi-regularly, I couldn't ignore it anymore. One afternoon when I heard the strange shuffling noise, I stopped working and went upstairs to investigate. I remember standing completely still, trying to hear anything I could, but it would always just be me standing there. I felt like I was losing my mind. I'd hear the noise, I would stop whatever I was doing, and run around the house. Once I proved to myself that there wasn't anybody walking around upstairs, I thought that it had to be squirrels that must have gotten into the siding of the house. I remember when I was growing up, a bunch of squirrels got under the roof in my parents' house, and it would keep me up all night. Anybody who has had this happen to them knows how much of a pain this can be, not just because they can be annoying running around, but because of the damage they can cause. Once I had my squirrel revelation, my mind was at peace for a little while. I figured I would just take care of it when I had some time. The noise continued for a few more days. Every time I heard the noise, I would write myself another note to remind me to call someone about the squirrels. I had so many other things on my plate that calling someone to deal with this was the least of my concerns. A few nights later, I worked a lot later than I usually would. I didn't get off of my computer and into bed until after 2 in the morning. While I was lying in bed trying to go to sleep, I heard the shuffling sound again. This was the first time I heard the sound at night. I tried to ignore it and just go to sleep, but this shuffling sound was different from the one I would hear from my office. Usually, I would hear the quick shuffle and then nothing, but now, this sounded like continuous movement. It annoyed me enough that I got up, stood on my bed, and tried listening through the ceiling. The shuffling sound stopped, but I heard something worse. I swear I could hear breathing. Just thinking that seemed ridiculous to me. Then I remembered that my house has a crawl space in it that's like a small attic. The crawl space was very small and kind of hard to even get to that I didn't even use it for anything. It dawned on me that my crawl space was directly over the bedroom. I was terrified. If it was breathing that I heard, I didn't want to think about what that meant. Even though I was scared now, deep down, I still thought I was dealing with squirrels. I got myself hyped up to at least look at the crawl space. I had one of the pull-down strings on the ceiling that released a ladder that led to the crawl space. The string was usually secured next to the door. I was short enough that I had to get a chair to stand on just to release the string so I could pull it. I started to pull the string hard because I thought it might have just jammed. Finally, it opened, and I slowly went up the ladder. All I did was poke my head into the crawl space and look around quickly. I didn't realize how scared I was until I was actually on the ladder. It was dark, and I didn't see anything except for 2 giant beams on each side of the crawl space. After my quick glance, I shut the crawl space door. I was starting to scare myself. I went into the living room and turned on the TV. I couldn't sleep. I just kept thinking about someone being in the crawl space, hiding behind one of those beams. At least with the TV on, I could try to distract my thoughts. I started to doze off eventually. While I was going in and out of sleep, I thought I heard the sound of a door creaking open. The sound was jarring enough that it woke me up instantly. I jumped off the couch and scanned the entire room. I didn't see or hear anything at first. I took a few steps from the living room into the kitchen. I still didn't see anything out of the norm. I walked out of the kitchen and into the hall. At the end of the long hallway was my office. Since the hallway was pitch black, I turned on the light. I half expected to see someone standing at the end of the hall once the light was on. I was so on edge by this point. I slowly continued down the hall and into the office. Once again, everything seemed fine. After finishing my search downstairs, I slowly made my way upstairs. Right away, I noticed that the pole string was dangling down, and even more terrifying, it looked like it was slightly swaying. I thought it had to be my imagination. I was sure that I secured that string when I closed it earlier. Because of how scared I was when I went up there, I thought to myself that it was possible that I could have left the string hanging, as unlikely as that may be. As I walked down the hall, I noticed my bedroom door was almost completely shut. I always leave it wide open. When I grabbed the door to open it, I noticed that the door made a loud, creaking sound. I was terrified. This was clearly the sound I heard a little while ago. What I couldn't figure out is why. I turned on the bedroom light, and the room looked exactly how I had left it. Just as I was about to leave the room, I noticed something. On the floor right next to my bed looked like a small clump of dirt. I got close to the dirt and bent over to look at it. When I was down on one knee, I thought I could hear that breathing sound again. From my position on one knee, I got down even further and looked under the bed. Lying under the bed, staring directly at me, was a middle-aged man. I screamed and fell back on my 2 palms. The man didn't move, but he shouted, "Hi, Julie, it's okay." I was trying to get up and run, but I felt like I was stuck in quicksand. He just kept yelling, "It's okay," over and over again. I ran downstairs, grabbed my phone, got in the car, and drove off. There's a 24-hour diner near my house. I drove to the diner and went inside in hysterics. I called the police, and they sent a patrol car to the diner to check on me, and then a few more to the house. When they got to the house, there was nobody there. They searched the entire house thoroughly and didn't find him. They found several empty bottles of water and a small pillow behind one of the pillars. I ended up staying at a motel for almost a month. I was terrified to go back home. I spent a lot of money on home surveillance after that. It's been a year, and that person never resurfaced. I don't know where he went, but I know he's still out there lurking somewhere. I have a theory as to who it was. An old family friend of my dad's who he had to cut off for, let's just say, being attracted to me. I think it was him, but it just looked like a much older version of him. If it wasn't, then whoever he was, he knew my name and somehow got into my house, living in my crawl space. I feel like sometimes even locking your doors isn't enough if someone really wants to get in.